So I'm going to first talk about the history of hacker groups. This guy right here, his name is Patrick. He was a part of one of the first hacker groups called the 414s. It's an area code in Wisconsin, and these 6 teenagers came together, and they were really inspired by that movie War Games to sort of dial into telnet systems across the early internet and see if they can break into networks. And they didn't really break into them, they just kind of guessed on the passwords. So these guys were like the forefounders of hackers. And you can see him right there on this old school terminal right there, just living the dream. So some of the things that these guys broke into, the Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratory, Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and even the security specific bank down in the States. So I'm going to go more into the history of hacking. I'm just going to have to press enter for every hack group that I bring up.
Okay.
So the first one in the 1980s, sort of the first group kind of crawling out of the early primordial ooze of the internet was the CCC, the Chaos Computer Club. These guys were formed in Berlin in around 1981, and they were really famous for hacking into the German Bildschirmtext, which is a computer network that was sort of catered towards the public in Germany to help them out with a lot of their services. And what they did was they actually transferred close to about 100,000 Deutschmark into their accounts to sort of show the public that, listen, the service that we're using every single day is not as secure as these people are saying that it is. And the next day they actually returned the money just sort of as a publicity stunt. So the next guy is coming up. The Cult of the Dead Cow. These guys are the ones who kind of coined the term hacktivism. And if you don't know what hacktivism is, it's a merge of activism and hacking for political or ideological reasons to sort of bring awareness to a certain topic that you kind of are inherently against. And that's sort of what you kind of do. A lot of governments now are the targets of a lot of hacktivisms to sort of like puncture their sort of power balloon, to show them that they're not as invincible as they are. And then the last group in the 80s that kind of disbanded due to their high profile attacks was P.H.I.R.M. These guys, they've been known to hack a lot of early corporations that use the internet. There's a whole bunch of them published guides on how to hack into the Bank of America, so they were really high profile. And a lot of the hackers actually disbanded after a couple of arrests, and some of these early hackers started up their own groups in the 90s. So going into the 90s, you're starting to see a little bit more organization, a lot more advanced attacks. TESO here, these guys are like the vulnerability hunters. They would look at software, find a vulnerability, and write an exploit code to exploit that vulnerability. Well, in today's age, if I found a vulnerability in Skype, let's say I typed in a couple of numbers and that somehow brought me to the matrix or the mainframe or a server that I should not have access to, I could write a script to do that, and I could sell that script. So that's kind of what TESO kind of started off, and they really were like an exploit factory. Next was Hackweiser. These guys were most notable for Project China. They actually did a lot of attacks against mainland Chinese computer networks. Next one after that is globallHell. These guys, really were kind of international. They had about 60 hackers in their entire group. They were responsible for hundreds of website defacements, trafficking stolen personal information, financial information, etc. Some of their notable attacks were against the United States Army, the White House, United States cellular telecommunication companies, and that's kind of wrapping it up for the 90s. Here in the 2000s, this is when we start to see the emergence of cyber warfare. The Honker Union, also known as the Red Hackers, kind of are very nationalistic Chinese hackers. And they kind of really came into being after the United States bombed the Yugoslavian Chinese embassy. What these hackers did was they started a campaign to really target American companies and agencies and started defacing their websites. one of their most notable attacks was after the Chinese equivalent for Google, Baidu, was hacked by an Iranian cyber army. And what they did was, in retaliation, they set up an entire campaign with thousands of hackers to attack and deface thousands of Iranian websites. They stole countless amounts of sensitive information, posted it online. So these guys are very nationalistic, and they really show their pride and their patriotism through this practice of technical expertise via hacking. These guys don't really need an introduction. Anonymous, they are probably one of the largest hacker collective out there, spanning almost every country out there. There's at least one hacker that's involved with them. I'll be diving deeper into Anonymous in a couple of more slides coming up. Next up, we have 2010. So this is kind of our current cyber warfare age. And what we're seeing here is really with the emergence of social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. To give you a little bit of statistics, back in 2000, in 2000, there was about 700 million internet users. Now we have about 3.5 billion internet users. Everyone is thinking about cybersecurity, whether you're a student or you're a CEO. This is something that really touches everybody, and this is why 2010, this current sort of decade that we're in, is extremely important for making sure that not only are you secure at home, but also you're securing your company that you're a part of. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing massive hacker collectives that are actually nation-state backed, like Syria, who sort of pledge allegiance to Bashar al-Assad, and they actually attack all of his political opponents, whether it's defacing their websites, DDoSing their attacks, anything that they could really do to really attack the opposition, they'll go ahead and do it for him. And some of the things that you can really note in the Syrian electronic army is that they're setting up a framework, a precedent for what it looks like when a country is in civil disorder, and they utilize things like cyber warfare within the country. The next group, Lulsec, kind of spawned off of Anonymous. These guys were like, the bad boys of the internet. Some of the things that I remember hearing about them was they would hack into epileptic support and care websites, and they would actually post like flash animations of like visually induced seizures, and they would literally cause people who visited the website to go into this crisis. These guys, Lulsec stands for Laugh Out Loud Security, and they're pretty notable for hacking to several high-profile clients and corporations like the CIA, Sony, Fox, HB Gary. So these guys are well organized. They were currently infiltrated by the FBI, so the group is disbanded at this moment. But if we go on to the next group, this is probably the most secretive and most advanced computer espionage group. I won't even call them hackers, because we're pretty sure that the Equation group is responsible for the architecture of the most advanced malware that we've seen to date, which is Stuxnet. Stuxnet was a weapon, essentially, built entirely out of code that was targeting the Iranian nuclear centrifuges to actually enrich uranium. Now, the uranium could be used for nuclear processing, as well as used for nuclear weapons. And what this virus did was it spun the centrifuges a lot faster than what the laboratory scientists actually saw. What they saw was everything was looking good, but these centrifuges were actually exploding and breaking apart because of the code. So that's kind of the history that we're kind of seeing right now of hacker groups.